Conflict, crisis, and protest are found at every stage of human life. Individuals, groups, and even the world community will continue to experience conflict and crisis in one way or the other. Such is the EndSARS crisis in Nigeria, which held between 8th and 22nd October 2020. The EndSARS crisis affected at least 26 states and more than 100 cities and towns across the country. As the adage says, we cannot see a smoke without a fire. The major agitation of the EndSARS protest is on police brutality. However, there are many historical perspectives on police brutality in Nigeria.
There is no gainsaying the fact that police brutality is as old as the Nigerian state itself. Africa's most prolific historian, Tony Falola, in his book, Colonialism and Violence in Nigeria, did allude that the history of police brutality in Nigeria can be traced to the activities of the colonial masters, who saw themselves as being above the authority and engaged in all series of violence against the natives. There were arbitrary exploitation through the instrumentality of taxations, among other things. So this act was inherited after the creation of the Nigerian state, and till today we continue to have the effects of the militarization that occurred afterwards.
Well, when you talk about police brutality in Nigeria, I think it is, I read an article sometime, it is as far back as 1980s, and the impunity these people enjoyed went so far that it entered the people of the SARS. I think the SARS is Special Anti-Robbery Squad, which was created in 1992, I guess, yes. They felt like they were too powerful for anyone to control. And it got to a point that they would just extort, even go as far as beating and killing the Nigerian youth, just because you're dressing well.
Police brutality in Nigeria has always been there. A situation whereby police violate the rights of innocent citizens, harassing them, searching them unnecessarily. This doesn't mean that Nigerian police are not doing well. They are doing their job, but what this means is that bad cops are more than good cops in Nigeria. We have had series of cases whereby suspects in custody are tortured in order to retrieve information from them. And this is against the provisions of the law.
A report by Amnesty International indicted SARS as being responsible for human rights abuse, cruelty, degrading treatment of Nigerians in the custody, and other widespread torture.
They call it Hawan Keke, the bicycle ride. I have witnessed it often. The room is dark. Your hands are tied up from behind. If it is not tight enough, the elbows are tied in a way that stops the blood from circulating. Your legs are tied to a chair so you cannot move. Then they torture you in whatever way they want. If they decide not to beat you, there is a shocker. They can use the shocker and it sparks when that thing touches you. You feel the shock everywhere, even inside your brain. Sometimes they use 2 of these machines and also beat them with a club. The head of the club is as big as my clenched fist. People are beaten and electrocuted at the same time. Sometimes they do real damage. They break people's legs and hands. Some die. Some survive. If you die, they don't care.
I really do not subscribe to the idea or opinion that the unit called SARS was always brutal to the citizens. My opinion is simple. My opinion is that the unit is made up of both the bad and the good eggs, which is not applicable to the police alone. Every organization has the bad and the good and the ugly.
The origin of the word EndSARS and the hashtag EndSARS could be traced to the tweet in the year 2017. The EndSARS crisis erupted following a viral footage of alleged SARS officers gunning down a young Nigerian and driving off his car on 3rd October 2020 on the social media.
I think around the 3rd of October, there was a video of a young Nigerian somewhere in Ugeli in Delta State who was seen being manhandled and later killed by the SARS operatives.
See them. Don't kill the boy. Let them run. See them. Don't kill the boy. Don't kill the boy. Let them run. SARS. Please save data. Keep the lessons. Keep the lessons. Kill the boy. Kill the boy. Run. See him. The boy don't die. See him. Let them run.
So it was this incident that led to the what we know today as EndSARS movement. And so it occurred that between the 10th of October to about 2 weeks later, protests erupt in all parts of the country simultaneously.
I want to believe that at least 2 out of every 5 Nigerian youths had witnessed SARS brutality. I was coming back from the cinema around 9:30 to 10 in the evening, and I was stopped that why am I driving an SUV? I told them it was my father's car. I showed them everything, and still they said okay that I was free to leave, but the rest of the people they will be arresting. And I said, why? But we have done nothing wrong. The next thing they slapped my friend that came with me from Ndukwu, started going through our phone, checked our phones. Then when they did not see anything, they even asked us to give them money. And when I said I was not going to give them, they said they were going to arrest the people that were with me, you know, until we had to give them, I think, was it 5,000 or 10,000 that day? And one of them had to plead that, this is how they do, like you're in a lorry, blah, blah, blah. And since that time, the anger in me didn't just, and I didn't know how to, you know, I didn't know who to report to or who to talk to. And now, thinking about it, it's actually made me come out during the EndSARS to protest, because if I could feel that way, how about the millions of Nigerians that also felt that way? How about the millions of Nigeria that they've oppressed that way to collect money from them just because they feel that they are untouchable?
I personally was a victim of this rogue SARS. I remember driving around Apo and they stopped me, asked for my vehicle papers, you give them, and instead of these guys to just do their work and let you go, they try to bring all manner of things to just make sure they get money from you. In fact, they do as they can even follow you to the ATM to go and withdraw to give them. So it's that too bad. So these are the anger, these are the recklessness on the part of police that accumulated to the point that the youth had to wake up and say, enough is enough, SARS has to end.
This sparked a nationwide movement and a global phenomenon. The advent of the social media has indeed gave Nigerians the means to vent out their anger on the government. One of the major tools utilized for the EndSARS campaign is the social media.
Twitter really fueled it because it gave everyone a voice that people didn't know we had before, a voice that people were not expecting, especially the federal government, a voice that a lot of elders were not expecting. So when everyone came together, because like I said, the anger was getting too much, so how do we do this? Let us go out, let us protest, let us show them our anger. Rather than fighting, let us show them our anger. Let it be known that we are angry about this, we don't want this again.
Social media indeed provided a platform for you to share experiences and thereby triggering angers of people who have been victims and even putting fear in others who haven't been victims but having heard what police have been doing to other youth. So that's how you can say that social media fueled the EndSARS crisis.
You also recall that Jack, who was the CEO of Twitter at the time, did support the EndSARS movement by making Twitter available for them to, post images and videos of the events around the country, which was what escalated the misunderstanding between the government and Twitter, and further led to Twitter ban by the Nigerian government.
There was a fake news then that the police, particularly a SARS operative, killed a young man in Delta State. It was later discovered that the information was not true. The young man who created the fake news was later arrested. In Lagos as well, there were a lot of fake news that came up in Abuja and so many parts of the country. There were a lot of fake news, and that was done through the social media, especially the Twitter, the Facebook, and then some through the WhatsApp.
Social media is fast becoming a tool of destruction to many youths. Instead of using social media to boost economic development and information dissemination, a lot of youths use social media to propagate violence during the EndSARS crisis. So this led to the spread of fake news, especially on Twitter and several other social media platforms.
One may argue that the lockdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic contributed to the emergence of the EndSARS protest. Food costs, already higher than normal due to government policies, were worsened by the destruction of storage houses and warehouses by hoodlums. In addition, commercial properties such as bank ATMs, shops, malls, and many others were also vandalized. Upon hearing the news of SARS disbandment, Nigerians took it with a grain of salt and carried on with pressing their demands for total disengagement of the units and for wide-range reforms of the Nigerian police force.
Every one of us occupies the highest office in this land, and that is the office of the citizen. Yes. The president occupies the highest political office. So his office is less than our office. I am an employer of the president. I pay the president's salary. I pay the bills of his family, and he must protect me.
The protesters, however, refused to back down from their protest, insisting on some demands such as
our 5 demands. This is what. Number 1, immediate release of all arrested protesters. Number 2, I think this is the most important point. Justice for all deceased victims of police brutality and appropriate compensations for their families. I tweeted something yesterday. I said, this, out of everything, this is the most important thing. Because even if there's reform and there's change, You cannot change a life that has been lost. That one is 100%. Number 3, setting up an independent body to oversee the investigation and prosecution of all reports of police misconduct within, they say within 10 days. I don't agree with that. You cannot, it's impossible to do anything within 10 days. But it's something that should be looked at. In line with the new Police Act, which they just signed, even before this, psychological evaluation and retraining of all disbanded SARS officers before they can be redeployed. I agree. So, really what they're saying is, okay, the ones that did offense, charge them. The ones that didn't do anything, or still retrain them. Even the good ones, retrain them and then redeploy them, which is very important. I'm doing that. And this 5th one, to me, after number 2, which is justice for the deceased victims, number 5 is the most important. After that one, increase police salary so that they are adequately compensated for protecting lives and property of citizens.
Apparently, the Nigerian government would indeed take a leaf from the turn of events during the EndSARS crisis. The government, however, is implored to put in measures to avoid the reoccurrence of such incidents.
The Nigerian government, regarding the activities of police in Nigeria, would be to see to the training of the Nigerian police. Nigerian police need training so that they can meet up with the standard expected of them globally.
We as youth also, we should also learn to approach police officers. Yes, approach sometimes matters. Not everyone is mad, not everyone is crazy. But then once you approach a police officer, some people are always fidgeting when they meet police officers on the road. Some people are always angry, that a police officer stopped me. Why would he stop me? No, he has the right to stop you. He has the right to ask you questions. Fine, he does not have the right to search your phone, and that's we've been fighting against that. But then a police officer has the right to ask you questions. Okay, where are you going to? What are you doing here? Open a problem. You don't know the intelligence they gathered about that area.
Currently, there is no more room for pampering or condoning of erring officers or excesses of officers in the Nigerian police force. Once anybody misbehaves and there are evidence to show, such person will be disciplined accordingly. And there is training and retraining for officers and men of the Nigerian police force to ensure that they have that's all it takes to be good police officers, especially respect for the rights of the citizens.
I would agitate for the total overhaul and reform of the Nigerian police architecture. And how we will do this is to ensure that the recruitment process into the Nigerian police force is tidied up. As it stands today, getting into the Nigerian police force is more about who you know than your qualification, either on paper and in the training. So many people get employed through the back door. They never attend any training because they know somebody that knows somebody in government. So there's a need for government to tidy up the recruitment process of the Nigerian police. There is no doubt that the Nigerian police is grossly underpaid, just like many other sectors in Nigeria. So if the police are well paid, it will reduce the rate of bribery that they demand on the road from the Nigerian youth, which often leads to altercation between them. Our advice government to do is to ensure that each policeman and woman has a body camera. We have seen this in developed countries where there are body cams worn by the police, such that before a policeman effects an arrest or even begin to accost a suspect, his body camera is on, and this camera is linked to a central unit where it can be monitored and where the records from the camera can be downloaded and viewed in the case of any claim of brutality.
EndSARS crisis came with its high and lows. There are many incidents that are full of appraisal, whereas there are some that are totally heart-wrenching.
Bros, they need to remove bullets like that. They need to remove bullets like that. See, what will tie your leg, Relax, Now, somebody give me, okay, see, this flag, I go put pressure on top of this flag. Hold on. I know say it go pain, but hold on down, Yes, apply pressure. Yes.
Really terrible. This is rough and tumble. So we really please broadcast it. The government need to do something. Most of the people here cannot bounce back without the necessary help. All right, I have to just show you. I have to really tell you you may be wondering whether there is no burglary for some of the people. I need to show you something right now. You can see how determined they came. They pulled down the structure.
Apart from the businesses, a lot of people lost their lives. If we look at 2020, October 2020, what happened at the Lekkitollgate, it's very, very, very sad. And it's so sad that the federal government are saying nothing as such happened. Even though there are evidences, video and pictorial evidences that things like that happened. But then they still said it did not happen. But that is very, very sad. People lost their lives. People lost their belongings during the EndSARS. People lost a lot of things during the EndSARS. But then the gain of it was that Nigerians came out as one. You know, we came out as one and our voice were heard. Not totally, but then to a point, our voices were heard. And we also let them know that, no, you cannot toy with this new generation.
The police itself is now being checkmated. They know the whole world is watching. So they are now more civilized on how they engage the citizens. Even if you are suspected to be a criminal, there should be a trial process that you go through rather than the usual extrajudicial calling that the police used to be involved with and the extortion. So then talking about the pain, yes, the protest came with a lot of pain, I must confess. From destruction of property to killing, taking of lives of policemen and even innocent Nigerians. You remember about the Lekkitollgate shooting. Yes, these were the pain, sadly, that came with the protest. But in all, if you ask me, it's a win-win for the country and her citizens, as police brutality has greatly been reduced after the protest.
Countries that have went through revolutions, even recently, taking the case of Syria, Libya, Egypt, and several other countries, for instance, would understand that revolution is not something to be witnessed. It's something that some people talk about as if it's a very small thing, but when it begins, you will not be able to control it. And most of those that are going to suffer are the innocent citizens. Innocent citizens who don't have money to travel. Most of our leaders, they have their jets that will take them out of this country wherever anything happens. But most of us who are poor, who will not be able to afford flying to peaceful countries, where do we go? Do we go to Ghana? Do we go to Togo? Or which country in this West Africa can accommodate Nigerians? So the EndSARS has proven to be a great lesson to Nigerians so that we can behave ourselves.
It was a wake-up call on government to be alive to its responsibilities and to know that the Nigerian youth are fed up of the brutality, the inequality in the country, the mismanagement of the economy, among other things, and that these youth are capable of causing a revolution. I think initially government undermined the EndSARS protesters and took it with a wave of hand, thinking that after a couple of days, everybody will go back to their respective homes. But that the protest lasted for 2 weeks was a statement. It was a big statement, made by the Nigerian youth. The second thing is the disbandment of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad. It was one of the major requests of the EndSARS protesters that government disband with immediate effect SARS, and that was achieved. And finally, on that point, was the fact that there was the constitution of panels of inquiry to look into the cases of abuse by the Nigerian police and recommend appropriate sanctions and fines. And, just like so many people were compensated in millions, some that lost their limbs, some that lost their lives. There was huge compensation for each of the victims of police brutality. So these are what I can call the gains of the EndSARS protest. Now, but talking about the pains, I'll also mention three major ones. Number one was the unfortunate loss of life on the sides of the protesters and also on the side of the Nigerian police force. Some police men and women were ambushed and killed, in the most inhumane manner by the protesters. The second thing was the fact that so many prisons were broken into and criminals were released. Some criminals are, waiting, trial. Some are awaiting trial. Some are on death row. So many hardened criminals were released on the street, and this, no doubt, led to serious problem for the Nigerian security force.
Is the EndSARS crisis a pain or gain? That submission is left at your discretion.